Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Thanks, It's Vintage with your hosts, Andrew.
And Lydia.
And we are back today at the Kenmore store location of Vino di Vino.
With these beautiful wines behind us.
I know there are some bottles I have definitely been eyeing. But today, rather than talk about a specific wine or style or varietal or region, we are going to go into a topic that I think will interest a lot of people. And that is
Closures.
We're going to talk about corks. We're going to talk about screw caps. We'll even touch on just a little,
the other ones.
glass bin and all these other little things that we see on the tops of our wine bottles that we probably just want to know a little bit more about. What's the deal with them? Why do we use them? Is there a difference? There is. Spoiler.
There is.
We're going to jump on in. But, before we jump in, we've got to have a
Let's have a little tipple.
little, vino on each of these. And this one is a screw cap, which is definitely going to be common for the type of wine that we are having here, and that is rosé. And this is a really fun, super delicious, super light, easy drinking.
Paydoc?
It is
I forget where this one's
Vin de France.
Vin de France?
But it is Le Poussin Rosé, and it is a very easy drinking
The chicken.
Provençal style blend from the south of France.
Lovely. Le Vion Rose.
Le Vion Rose.
Cute.
Yeah. And
I
that
had the new vintage of this. I'm excited.
It's absolutely delicious. It's just as good as it is in years past, and it's lovely. And you will find this rosé in each of our Vino di Vino locations. So
Absolutely.
this is one as we get into warmer weather. It's nice and warm today, so
Rosé is turning up. It's exciting.
they
exciting
are
time.
arriving on the boats.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, yes, there we go.
I mean, yeah. It's the peach. It's the strawberry.
It's lovely. Nothing like that first sip of wine.
At 10 a.m. in the morning. 9:30.
9:30. I was going to say,
we're starting early.
We are starting early. We are filming at 9:30 in the morning. However, that won't be the last of rosé, wine, you name it, for today. I know I've got plans tonight, and of course there are a couple of tasting appointments I have today to find new wines for the wine club. And of course also for offers. I'm meeting with a winemaker actually later today, which is going to be great. I'm not going to spoil anything because we need to wait. We need to get on the email list to know who they are and what's amazing about their wine.
You can tell me off camera.
I will. All right. Well,
so let's get
into corks.
So we can talk about the up to 12 or 14 different types, but the two main ones are cork and screw cap. They are the overarching most common closures in wine. And obviously cork is the much more established and much more ancient way of closing wine. And it really goes back, you can go back a very long way to the use of cork. The first thing to note is that it is predominantly from Portugal. So this will be a factor in quite a few of the chats we're going to have today, but basically it was used during the Roman Empire as a closure for many things, not necessarily wine, because obviously glass was not really being used as a storage vessel at the time. But it goes back to basically the Roman Empire. And then after the Roman Empire fell, it lost its purpose and it wasn't as used for a long time until really the 1300s is when it started appearing again.
Gotcha.
But it really kind of trickled around Europe, not really elsewhere, mainly just Europe, mainly because of trading routes and all those things. And the one thing that the Roman Empire kind of dissolved for a while were the trading routes. So, Cork just wasn't being moved around as much, and
Right.
therefore it wasn't being used as much. But it popped up again in the 1500s. It started being used as like amphora closures in the 1300s and beyond. And then eventually we get to the 1700s, the 17th century, I should say, 1600s. And it started really being associated with wine.
Gotcha.
But like many things, Dom Perignon
pops
up in
back
the
to
history.
that guy.
Yeah. I don't know that that's true at all.
Well, we know
there's
that
not a lot of evidence
yeah,
that we can really pull from. But one of the many things he's attributed to is the use of cork.
Well,
and he noted its properties, apparently.
That one could be true, honestly. But
I mean, he could have been using it, but he definitely didn't start the trend.
No, he didn't start the trend. It's also, it's why you have to take anything with Dom Perignon as a slight grain of salt, with a slight grain of salt, I should say, because as we know, and we talked about it in our last episode, about sparkling wine, he didn't invent sparkling wine. No. In fact, he was trying to get the wine to stop being sparkling. He thought that was a problem with the wine, and he attempted his whole life to stop it. So,
but I think he probably did recognize the significance of what cork could do.
Yeah, I think that may be a little more realistic. Since he was working with still wines, I could see that this is probably something that's a bit more in the realm of reality. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. So then we have and again, the British are to thank for so many parts of the wine industry that we know and love today.
So funny.
So funny. Yay. Yay, colonialism. But basically, glass was being played around with a lot. And it was the British that really figured out how to create a strong enough glassware that could withstand liquid storage, essentially.
Right.
But that required a different kind of furnace, a different kind of material. They changed from wood to coal. Coal burns hotter.
Right.
Hence the glass being able to be made thicker, essentially. And with that was a guy called, let me get his name, Kenelm. Not a name I was super familiar with.
What was his name?
Kenelm Digby.
Kenelm? I wonder if that's how we got...
Kenelm.
I wonder if that's how we got to Kilm.
Probably
I'm
not sure. I think that's probably
might be something
Scottish.
Different.
Oh, well, he's probably Scottish.
Could be. You never know.
Anyway.
Never know.
He was a big character. Had a lot of high-powered connections. Talked himself up a lot. Had a really interesting life. Possibly killed a man, and
as you do back
then, avoided jail time or something. I don't know. He just has a great history. But he and there was another man at the time called Robert Mansell who was actively becoming a leader in glassblowing.
Okay.
And one of his students paired up with Digby, and they basically created not a kiln, what am I saying? A furnace.
Yes.
That had more air channels into it, which also encouraged a higher level of burning. So therefore they were using a different material, and they changed the function of the furnace, which allowed better glass. And at that point, we needed a better closure. And that's where cork really kind of cemented itself as the wine closure of the day. So, yeah, that was around, I can't remember the actual date of that. It was like late 1600s, early 1700s. And then in 1703, England made a deal with Portugal for their cork. And that's when it really solidified.
Okay.
And it's a fascinating thing that, first of all, cork is from a tree.
Yeah.
And it is harvested sustainably, which is one of the great benefits of cork, is that it is an environmentally functional and sustainable product.
Yeah.
It is natural. We literally peel a tree, and that is every 9 to 12 years we can harvest the cork, which is, again, the kind of outer rim of the bark. And then they just regrow. But it does take 9 to 12 years. So
Yeah.
it's a very slow process. The trees can live to around 200 years. So in that respect, it is literally sustainable. They are using a lot of CO2
Right.
while they are regrowing their bark. And they, the cork itself can come in grades of quality. So we usually have A, B, and C grades, which we'll factor in later because that's one of the reasons why the Southern Hemisphere needed a screw cap. It's one of the biggest players in that. But so yeah, 3 grades of the natural cork. But then we have many other types of cork that we have created over the years. Do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, so it's not just one type of cork. And of course, we have, for everybody who's watching, we actually have these lovely, examples of cork here. And one of them is going to be natural cork as it is. And that's,
those two.
These two here. That's where it looks like what you expect. It looks like the logo actually for Thanks It's Vintage, which is actually what the logo, logo is. And it's a natural cork. And it's got these little divots and everything in it. And it looks like there's all these little imperfections to it.
It does have flaws. And so I would assume that that's like maybe B and that's probably C.
Yeah, I would assume that too, looking at them. And the thing with this is like this is the old school. This is what we're talking about. This is what we started with,
and
right?
They literally punch it. There's a punch that they just go straight through. And it makes
one of those things that if you're satisfied by watching like videos of repetitive things that just look like everything is very cleanly happening over and over and it just soothes you. It's one of those. Like if you watch a video of this on YouTube, exactly. It's an ASMR situation. It's really satisfying to watch the punching of the corks. But this is what we're talking about here. And these are, this is what we started with, but eventually we actually got to this. And this is Agglomerated. Thank you for reminding me of the name.
But the reason that this exists is because when they're punching the cork, there's obviously leftovers.
Yep.
And then the other feature of cork is that it's recyclable, so you can recycle it. It can be broken down. And this is where we lead to agglomerated, or we'll speak on culminated later, but agglomerated is when you break it down to small particles and then reform it with a synthetic bind of some description.
Yeah. And this is going to be a very common type of cork you're going to see, actually. Yes. I would say that when it comes to...
This is technically also...
Yeah, champagne corks, a lot of them you'll see are exactly that. They are agglomerated. And you'll know this feeling. Or Prosecco corks, too. Most Prosecco corks are agglomerated.
Yeah.
So you'll know this feeling when you hold it, you squeeze it, versus one of these natural pieces of cork that's just punched out.
And it's squishier.
This has got more give to it. This is drying out a bit, and this doesn't dry out the same way, which is very interesting. Of course, how this is going to operate once you put it into the bottle and, how that's going to keep the wine. The other thing I would also like to mention is you're going to see the naturally punched out cork a lot more on wines that are, I don't want to say higher tier specifically, but they're more historically significant in nature, from a specific region or specific style. So, we're talking about like Brunello di Montalcino. We're talking Burgundy, whether it be white or red. We're talking Bordeaux, the higher end Bordeaux's, we'll often move towards using the classic punched style. And that's where you're going to see more of this.
Grade of that style.
Exactly. And that's keeping with a very long tradition, essentially, is what they're doing. But also there are reasons that they choose to go with the highest grade, naturally punched out cork. And that usually has to deal with aging and the fact that we're allowing micro-oxygenation to happen. And if the grade isn't the highest quality, that's where we run into some issues where it could oxygenate too quickly and your aging of the wine could be, ruined, essentially. You could go past the point that is peak drinking window without realizing it if the cork is not up to snuff.
And then there is the colmated, which is where you take an inferior cork, not that this is particularly inferior, but you fill it in with dust, with cork dust. So you're kind of patching the major holes, and that just makes it a better product.
Yeah.
It's not as common. That version is just not as common because it takes time to do.
Yeah. But these are, I think cork is one of the most common things you'll see on enclosures for wine. It's definitely the most prominent. And then the other thing to note too is, of course, cork does have its downsides.
Yes.
And that is one, that cork taint is possible.
Mm-hmm.
This is when we say exactly TCA. And this is basically a chemical compound that makes the wine smell like wet cardboard or like a damp basement.
Mold, damp.
This is what we mean when we say cork taint. So if you ever hear somebody say, "Oh, the wine it's corked," that's what we're saying. So if you don't smell the wet cardboard, if you don't smell the damp basement, it's not corked. It could be another flaw.
It could be another.
There are a list of flaws, right? This is one of them. This usually was an issue because of how the wineries were being cleaned for the longest time. And it was the chemicals that they were using in the wineries to clean and disinfect. And it would make its way into the corks and cause TCA. And that would, of course, mean that once the wine was bottled and corked, it was immediately basically done. Like there was no way that wine was going to be anything but ruined, unfortunately. And so TCA used to be a lot more common, but today wineries no longer use the harsh synthetic chemicals that we think of. I'm not going to say they use bleach, or we're using bleach, but when I say synthetic chemicals, I'm talking about, cleaners like bleach, right? Things that we have
really involved compounds that just weren't that necessary.
No, exactly. Again, not saying they use bleach, but I'm just trying to give you the idea of like, this is what we mean when we say synthetic chemicals, right? But a lot of wineries have actually switched. Most wineries across the globe have switched because of TCA to using natural disinfectants.
Yes.
Things that are much cleaner, made from naturally occurring compounds out in nature, and of course prevents corks from getting TCA. So now this is much rarer. This used to be a lot more common 30 years ago. Today, it's much harder for someone to find a corked bottle.
Yes.
And so generally when you do find one, it's like, nope, that's really a one-off.
Yeah. And then there are a couple of other types of cork to mention. Technical, which is part of the agglomerated style, but instead of the whole thing being agglomerated, there is a cap on either end of natural cork. Then there's synthetic, and we have 2 synthetic corks here.
Yes.
And they are made with a kind of polyplastic, or there's various compounds which I didn't memorize, but it's more of a plastic derivative. They do not tend to oxygenate the wine. They are made for young wines to be drunk within a year or two, essentially.
Yes. I will say it's also, this is one of those corks that, if you see this on a bottle and it happens to be on a bottle that you think should be something that uses natural cork that's supposed to be ageable, it gives you a big indication on the quality of the wine usually in that bottle, because nobody who is making a high quality wine that can age is going to want to use one of these.
Yes.
Because it limits their customers. It limits who they can sell their wines to. It limits the price they can fetch that wine for. So if you ever see a synthetic cork on, and here's a great example because I did see this once, on like a bottle of Burgundy. That's a Burgundy to be consumed young.
Yes.
That's a Burgundy to be consumed young.
And we saw it recently on a Barolo.
And we saw it recently on a Barolo. And it really
does. It was
does.
their entry-level Barolo. It was not one of their...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it just tells you, like, you buy that off the shelf, that's a drink right now kind of wine.
And it's not saying it's a bad wine by any stretch of the imagination. It could be a fantastic wine. It's just not meant to age. That's all that means.
Which is why I should be careful when I say quality, but I want to really designate like the ageability versus not ageability.
Yes.
Yes.
And that is the main beautiful function of a cork.
Yeah.
Is that it allows the right amount of oxygen if it's good.
Right.
If it's not flawed, it will allow the right amount of oxygen into the wine over decades and allow that wine to change beautifully at the right rate.
Exactly. Yeah.
And hence the lead into alternatives. So the major leader is screw cap.
Yes.
We have a few others. There's, a glass topper, which you've probably seen around. They're not very common. They're also not very environmentally great because they add weight to the bottle.
And
that adds
just
emissions, essentially.
Exactly.
When shipping, it just adds weight.
The heavier it is, the
emissions.
more fuel the ship has to use.
Yeah.
It's just, listen, every little ounce of weight counts, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too with glass enclosures is you generally find those, again, also on young wines that are meant to be consumed young.
Yeah, I've seen it on like Provence rosés that are trying to look a bit more fancy.
Yes, yeah, and that's usually where you see that. I've also seen it on Austrian Gruner Veltliner. That
really, okay.
Yes, but again, meant to be consumed young, and then that same producer had corks on their more serious Gruner Veltliners that were meant to be put away for a little bit of time.
Right. Okay. But you're really just relying on whatever seal is being used.
Yeah.
And that's usually just a rubber seal.
Yes.
It's got nothing, there is no natural entity allowing air through. So if that seal is flawed, again, you've got a problem. It's going to oxygenate too fast. If it's too tight, it just won't age at all. Yeah. But again, the point is not to age.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not meant to age under a glass cap. But then we've got screw caps. And the reason I mentioned earlier that the fact that most of the cork in the world, I think there's a little bit coming from North Africa and there's a little bit coming from somewhere else.
There's a little coming from North Africa. I think there's a little bit coming from, I want to say South America, but I could
potentially.
I think there is,
right, actually.
but it's a very little amount. And I also just as a point for everybody to understand, when we say most of the world's cork comes from Portugal, we're talking like 90+% of the world's cork comes from Portugal, and it all comes from the north of Portugal. These are cork tree forests.
Yes.
That are legally protected, inspected by the government constantly,
and they're very beautiful.
They're beautiful, and you can go and visit them. But it is hand harvesting of the cork, and it is, like you said earlier, those legal requirements. They cannot touch that tree for like 9 to 12 years. Like, they've got to leave it alone once they've basically debarked the tree. But that's, and so as you talk about screw caps.
Yes. So you've probably heard someone say that Australia and or New Zealand were the leaders in the screw cap revolution. And that's mostly true.
Mostly.
But the biggest reason for that was that Australia and New Zealand were getting inferior cork. They were so much further away than anyone else. They were just the last ones to get the pick of the choice. So it's the pick of the choice. The
pick of the litter.
It's early, guys. And they were just getting inferior quality. And that was causing many issues in the wineries.
Yeah.
And this was noted as early as the 60s. And there were revolutions happening mostly in Europe at the time. So the design of the screw cap has existed for a long time and was being used in other areas like food preservation and things like that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really until the 50s that a French company designed, I don't know if they designed the patent, but they designed it specifically for wine bottles.
Yeah, they designed it in the 1950s. It wasn't patented until the 1960s.
Yes, okay, that's right.
Yeah.
So 1959 is when Le Bouchon, what are their name? Le Bouchon Mécanique, developed it specifically for a wine bottle. And then in 1963, Yalumba, which is one of the biggest wine houses in Australia,
I know them well.
They They approached that company.
Oh, they were the ones.
They were the ones that started it from an Australian perspective.
Oh.
But they weren't the first to use it. It was a Swiss company. It was a Swiss wine company. Yeah, in 1973, I think, is when a Swiss company were the ones to officially commercialize it.
That is fascinating.
But then Australia was very close to follow.
Okay.
Because they desperately needed it, unlike a lot of Europe.
So
they were experiencing cork taint at a higher rate than other parts of the world because they were just getting poorer quality. And so Yalumba were kind of the first to start it in Australia, but then Yalumba, Penfolds and Tublick all commercially released it in the 70s.
Okay.
So all South Australian producers, and all mainly Barossa producers, all started it in the 70s. Parts of Europe were doing it as well, a little bit afterwards. But here's what we're getting to the core of. The resistance was immense. People did not like it because they saw it as saying that the quality of the wine was inferior. They thought it meant that it was an inferior product.
Yeah, they thought it meant it was cheap wine.
Yeah, they thought it just meant cheap wine because there were a lot of bulk producers doing it because it's easier and it's safer and it allows wine to stay fresher for longer. So there was no reason to be using cork if you were making wine to be drunk immediately.
Exactly. I mean, what's the point,
What's
right?
the point? It was also cheaper to do.
Yeah.
But it is cheaper. It's less sustainable.
It is less sustainable. You are using aluminum. You are using plastic. You are using. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry. Of course, we say aluminum differently. I forgot,
There is an I.
Well, I don't know.
First,
listen, okay? I'm also a New Englander, all right? There's words that the rest of the country thinks I pronounce incorrectly, okay?
Anyway, so it's aluminium, which is not, you have to mine it. It is not a particularly ecological product.
Right.
But then you're also using a plastic insert.
Yeah.
So there are two things. There are two parts of it which are not recyclable I guess aluminium can be recyclable.
Aluminum can be recycled, but
I don't know that
the plastic probably can't.
Gets recycled that much.
That was the biggest lie told to us as kids in the 90s was recycle everything. It's all recyclable. And then you find out there's like so many different grades of plastic and you can only recycle like something stupid, just like a fraction of a percent of it. So it's probably not recyclable.
Not regenerative in any way. But, so, I mean, the resistance had nothing really to do with the sustainability. People just didn't like it. They thought it meant inferior product. And then the traditionalists obviously put their nose immediately way up.
Yeah.
They were just like, absolutely not. This is ridiculous. You're not serious if you're not using cork. Rada. So it fluctuated over the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and it really kind of almost died. It was quite significantly unpopular by the late 80s, I would say.
Interesting.
And there are makers I know in Australia that started it in the 70s and then stopped. They went back to cork.
Oh, wow.
QC Vale is one of them in Eden Valley.
Oh, okay.
Because they got so much pushback. And they were just, their sales were suffering because people thought it meant they were making
cheap, like Riesling.
Which, of course, they weren't. They were making exceptional Riesling.
Yeah.
And then it really it was the people that saved it, Clare Valley in Australia.
Really?
In South Australia, who also make Riesling. In fact, they are probably the better respected Riesling makers. Well, that's probably a bit. I might get aggression about that. But
I'll let you touch on that.
Well, America doesn't get a lot of Clare Valley, so it's hard to.
That's true. We don't.
Yeah, it is hard to say that in America. Yeah. But Clare Valley, very respected Rieslings, has been that way for a very, very long time. Eden Valley also, but they do other things quite a lot.
Yeah.
And Clare Valley also does other things, but in less quantity than Eden Valley. Eden Valley does a
Yes.
lot of Shiraz. So anyway, point is, a group of winemakers, there were 14 of them, and guess how it started? They met in a pub. This decision was made in a pub
You know
in
what?
rural Australia.
This just speaks to many great decisions have been made over a pint of beer or a glass of wine.
It's awesome.
And that is
Yeah.
a historical fact, everybody. I'm going to die on that hill. Didn't say bad decisions aren't made over that too, but a lot of good ones are.
Yeah. So it was a group of winemakers that were all part of the Clare Valley Winemakers Group. And the chairman or the director at the time was Andrew Hardy from Hardy Wines.
Oh.
So one of the bigger producers in
Yeah.
Australia. And they met and they decided that they were going to screw cap even their premium selections. And that's when the tide started turning.
That is interesting because, so when we talk about screw caps in Australia, I didn't know much about who started that whole trend there. What I did know a bit more of as we came into this conversation was that in New Zealand, which was, also at the same time, pushing screw caps for the same reasons, that it was Villa Maria was the producer in New Zealand that was like, and they were a big producer in New Zealand. They were the ones who really pioneered it for New Zealand. And that they were like,
well,
hey.
it was basically happening at the same time.
And
I think it was very close.
Okay.
So I think the Clare Valley group were the ones that did the premium end of the spectrum, possibly first.
That probably makes a lot of sense.
But New Zealand was so close behind.
Okay.
And to the point now, and this is a great statistic, where 95% of wine released from New Zealand is under screw cap.
That I did know, which is wild.
That's so huge. And 80% in Australia. There's still some cork usage in Australia, and a lot of it is premium. But there is a lot of really respected wine that is under screw cap in Australia. Tyrrell's, all of Tyrrell's wine, a screw cap.
I think this is a good point to make when it comes to like the screw caps here, because you just touched on this, right? If they're bottling their premium wines in screw caps, it does mean that screw caps
that they believe it ages
are good with aging. And here's the thing. This is actually something that everybody should know, and I wrote this down as a point to be made here, because we talked about how screw caps, it was hard to get people to adopt it because at first it was the bulk wine and it was perceived as, oh, that's cheap and that's, low quality, low grade, right?
It's clearly
never been, and it's like, that's not true. Today, we have the opposite problem in the country. Now everybody does have literally zero issues with buying a wine that has a screw cap on it. What we are now seeing is people have an issue with buying a wine that has a screw cap and is at a higher price point. But most of those wines are coming from Australia and New Zealand, where we find it's a bit more resistance. Why would I buy a $50 Pinot Noir from New Zealand that has a screw cap? And it's like, well, because that is the enclosure they've chosen to use. Doesn't mean the wine in the bottle is not worth that price. It is premium Pinot Noir.
And it also doesn't mean that it can't age.
Exactly. That is actually something that's changed, because now, as technology has changed, the screw cap was the screw cap as we know it was invented in the 1950s, patented in the 60s. It does not mean that we are using the exact same
and hence,
manufacturing of this.
Approaching the same company after they'd already created it.
Right.
Being like, hey, we want one, but we want you to tweak these things.
Yeah. And they are engineered now for, you to be able to actually age it for decades.
Yeah.
But now it becomes a price point differentiator. So we're now, I don't want to sit here and say that the screw cap that's on this rosé is designed so that you can age this rosé for ages. First of all, the rosé is not designed to age, but second of all, this one, I should say, there are rosés designed to age. We'll have an episode on that. We're getting to summer.
I really want.
Oh, it's going to be so fun. But it is to say that specifically, there is now a difference in screw caps. So no two bottles are going to have the exact same type of screw cap. They will visually look the same to you, but in reality, they are made different. So now it's a price point differentiator. If you see a screw cap on and I'm going to really limit this to the Southern Hemisphere.
Okay.
Because I can't say it's exactly the same for the Northern Hemisphere. There are Burgundy producers that have done screw caps, very few. But they are definitely doing screw caps with the idea that you need to like drink that wine early, because then all their higher tier Burgundies
will be uncork.
So those screw caps are probably not designed this way. But on the Southern Hemisphere, we do now have premium options with screw caps that have been designed to allow for that micro oxygenation, just like cork, for a decade or more.
And one of the leaders of that, well, that's probably unfair of me to say, but one of the people that proved that with their wines was Tyrrell's in Hunter Valley. So their Semillon, their VAT 1 Semillon, that is a wine that is meant to age. You can drink it young, but why would you? Because it's less interesting when it's young. It's one of those fascinating wines where when it is young, and they have like various types of Semillon that they make, and their cheaper stuff is meant to be drunk young because it is super fresh. It's kind of akin to pick pull in the way that it's like really linear, really clean, amazing with seafood. It's just one of those vivacious wines on the palate. But if you leave it for 20 plus years under screw cap, which theirs are, they develop these insane notes, and it's just a completely different wine by the end of it. It's like hay and just all these beeswax, hay, really intense, completely different flowers.
Semillon.
It's an amazing wine to age, and their premium Semillons are fully intended to be put away.
Yeah.
Like, I did drink one too young. I drank one at the 9-year mark once, and I should have left it for easily another 10.
See, that's the beauty of some of these wines out there. This is why I love wine. Some wines, 10 years is peak. And then you have these wines in these pockets of the world that are like, no, it really, you're going to wait 2, sometimes 3 decades.
Sometimes 3.
I mean, the only other place I think of that's a great consistent example is Bandol, where it's like Bandol Rouge.
But also Riesling.
And Riesling too.
Yeah.
German Riesling.
This is to prove the point that not just red wines are meant to age. Like there are white wines out there that
they go the
want
distance.
them to age. And the experience of the aging is just so different to the original product.
Right.
And Riesling is one. Semillon is one. But not everywhere.
Not everywhere.
Yeah. Like a lot of Australian Riesling, there are a lot of producers making ageable Riesling, but the vast majority is not. It is meant to be drunk young. And it's zippy and fun and delightful, but if you let the good stuff age, very
exciting.
Cool.
Oh man. Now I want to have to.
I know. Now I want.
Now I want a bottle of that actually.
Yeah.
Now I want aged Semillon, which I honestly have not had back vintage Semillon since I was serving it on the bottle list, and it was
not impossible to
South
find.
African producer.
Yeah.
When I was in restaurants, and it was oh my god, I remember that wine so clearly. But I'm not gonna say the name because I always butcher it because it is a Dutch name that is pretty long. And wait, I think I'm not gonna butcher it. I think I remember it. It's Bokenhauskloof. Birkenhauskloof.
Yeah.
It's. I'll get it right someday.
I don't think I've drunk their wines.
Oh, it was
South Africa is a
magic
fun
in a bottle.
Exploration.
It was wild. I introduced that to some guests, and that was a Semillon that changed people's perspective on what white wine can be, and the aging too, like you just said.
Yeah.
This has been a really fascinating discussion.
It has been
about enclosures. I think everybody has had a lot of questions about what's the deal with cork versus screw cap. The plastic corks.
Yeah.
Why do those exist? And the only other thing I think I just want to point out, in case anybody does have one, because we do use one on this show, and that is a Corvin. Is that if you do have a Corvin, and you've got a Corvin that's the needle Corvin, so that's the timeless series. Because if you have a pivot, this doesn't matter. You have to open the bottle anyway for the pivot. And that's your 30 days max, which is a great option for anybody who is actually like going to consume the bottle within a month. They just, they want a glass now, and maybe 4 days later they want another glass. Excuse me.
the rosé.
It's the rosé. But if it's not real cork, Corvins don't work.
Yes.
So I need to point that out.
I've
learned
that. You already knew, but
Yeah.
you kind of did it without thinking.
Did it without thinking. So if it's one of these, you know, if it's one of these types of corks, the plastic types of corks, I'm already blanking on the name for this again. Synthetic. Thank you. Don't use a Corvin on a synthetic cork. What will end up happening is, because there's no way for this to have, there's no channels in this cork
Yes.
of like ways for oxygen to get through. It's
It'll
just
just-
the little punch that you made. And essentially, that's the only way. It basically pushes wine back out through that hole, and it starts leaking everywhere. It doesn't actually work. So
It's messy.
good
don't do
good thing for anyone to know who does have a Corvin. Don't do it on the synthetic corks.
But agglomerated, totally fine.
Agglomerated's fine.
Yeah.
Natural cork is fine.
Mhm.
You know, the other corks
Use
are
a
fine.
needle on champagne.
Don't do it on a bottle of champagne.
Don't do
Oh
that.
God, that would be,
That will be bad.
somebody's gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
Like, that pressure is going to cause a problem.
Yeah.
Well,
I think we've touched on all the
I think we have.
important points, maybe?
Yeah.
You can tell us if we haven't.
Well, I
Hopefully
hope that everybody learned a little bit more about these enclosures and why we have them, what they mean. Don't be afraid of screw caps in a more premium bottle.
Don't be afraid.
And of course,
Excellent wine.
understand that cork is natural, and it is recyclable, and it is sustainable. And so we should never be looking at cork as something that should be done away with. In fact, it should continue to be used. It has its worth in the world of wine, and that worth is very valuable.
Yes.
So I think with that, the only thing I'll just touch on is that if you haven't already, check out vinodivino.com.
Mm-hmm.
Check out our locations here throughout Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, check out our wine club,
Yes.
which we will always have one episode
Which
of the
is-
podcast every month dedicated to the wine club.
We're on our second month.
We are coming up on May.
Very excited about
Right.
this selection.
Same. Very, very excited. It's going to be really, really good. So, that being said,
On that note,
cheers.
cheers.